Hey guys, welcome to another Color Connection with Amber episode. In this episode, we're going to do some freehand watercolor and also some loose watercolor with the assistance of a stencil. I'm using the color palette from the Altenew Inspiration Challenge, so be sure to enter your projects with the link below. Let's go ahead and get started. The June 2020 Inspiration Challenge is hosted by JC Gaspar this month, and we're working with teals and browns. I'm going to start with the Coffee with a Splash stamp set. This is one of the older sets, and you can see that it's well loved from my crafty stash. And I thought it would be fun to do some loose watercolor with this set because it has a sketchy feel. I have the watercolor paper set. I'm going to use an A2 size piece from that. And I have the Altenew Artist Watercolor. So this is a 24 pan set. The colors coordinate with the ink families. So if you're familiar with the Altenew inks, then you'll be really comfortable with these watercolors. I'm going to start by picking my colors. I'm going to use Cool Summer Night, Delectable Delights, and also Coffee Break, which seems appropriate. So I have a selection of round brushes and a pipette, and the pipette I'm going to just use some water to rehydrate my watercolor pans. And then for the round brushes, these are from Wonder Forest. I like them because they come to a sharp point. So even if I'm using a large brush, I don't have to change my brush to get some fine detail in there. So I'm starting off by putting down some clean, clear water, and I'm just kind of doing a swoosh across the page. What I wanted to do was drop in some blue at the top and blend it into brown at the bottom. If you missed my first color connection episode based on the June inspiration colors, I will link it up in the right hand corner. That episode focused on color blocking with stamping techniques, so do check that out. So I'm just going to tilt the watercolor paper so that I can get the color to start to move, and you can now more clearly see the clean clear water that I put down on the paper to start with. Now I'm going to bring in some brown, so I'm just cleaning my brush. When you're doing your watercolor, you want to make sure that you have 2 jars of water, one that you're going to clean your brush in, and then another one that's going to stay clean and clear so that you can use that on your projects. So I just dropped in some of the Coffee Break, and I'm just going to again move that around. So I'll continue to add some pigments and move it around. I want the blue and the brown to mix just a little bit, but my thought on this was to have some spilled coffee. Since that stamp set is very sketchy, I thought it would be a good look for and a good background for this type of card. So I'm just moving those pigments around, and I'm going to set this aside to dry. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm doing a watercolor card is create 2, because then I can set the first panel aside, let it dry a bit, and move on to the second. And that's just what I'm going to do here. So I have another piece of watercolor paper. This is the Rose Bouquet Stencil, and I'm just going to get this taped down to my card. And actually, I've gone ahead and sprayed it with some pixie spray on the back side of it so that it has a light tack adhesive on it. And I literally just put the stencil in my trash can and spray it directly into there. You can also take it outside. You just want to make sure that you do it in a well-ventilated area. So once I have that glued down to the paper, I'm going to wet each of the roses and the leaves and start dropping in some color. So I'm dropping in Cool Summer Night and a little bit of Seashore as well to have a variation in color. When I'm watercoloring, I like to have a mix of colors versus just one straight color. I think it adds more interest to the card, a little bit more flow, and I really like the variation. So each of these roses will be slightly different in color. So here you can see I'm starting off with the Seashores for this one so that it's a different tone. And super simple, I'm just dropping in the color. You can go as light as you want, as dark as you want, and get it really vibrant. You know, if you take your colors directly from the pan, they're going to be super vibrant. That's one of the things that I really love about these watercolors. So I'll keep adding some depth to these flowers, but I do want to keep some of the white areas so that there's highlights in the bloom. Now, of course, the stencil is also going to maintain some highlights as well. So here I have the coffee break color and I'm just adding that on. And again, I added clean clear water to the leaves before I added the brown. That way the pigments can move and they don't just immediately start absorbing into the paper. I find that they're easier to move if the paper is wet first. And then there's a couple buds on here. I'm just going to hold the stencil down because it was popping up just a little bit over there. And then I'll go ahead and remove the stencil. Now, you can let it dry for a little bit before you do this, but I went ahead and removed it right away. And you can see that some of the colors started to blend and I lost a little bit of the white areas on one of the roses. So after this panel dried, I thought the colors dried back a little too much. If you like the soft colors, you can leave it here, but I'm going to add some additional pigment. And I'm using the same process. I'm going to lay down a layer of clean clear water right over the pigments that I already have. For the most part, because they're dry, those colors are going to stay. But if you continue to swipe over it with clean clear water, you will reactivate those colors and they will start to move. So it just depends on the look that you're going for. So here I'm mixing up some seashore with the cool summer night. I'm just going to drop that in. So you can see that's more of a blue-green that we have going on there now. And I'm going to move those pigments just like I did last time and deepen up these colors. I move on to the coffee break after I get the blue down, and you can see that the blue is cascading into that brown there, and those are going to mix even more. So as I was doing this, I was thinking about how this background would fit into the stamp set, and what I was seeing is that the blue would kind of be the steam coming off the coffee, and the brown color was going to be spilt coffee. So I thought this stamp set would be perfect for that because it has little steam coming up. I waited for the panel to completely dry, so I stepped away from my desk completely, otherwise I get really impatient. And I'm going to stamp this in Obsidian pigment ink. The reason it needs to be completely dry is that your stamp will have fuzzy edges if it's still slightly damp. Because of the way the swooshes on this went, I decided to use 2 sentiments to fit into those spaces. And the stamp has some black splatter included with it, so I thought I would add some more to continue that pattern. So I have the jet black ink spray here from Altenew. I've taken out the nozzle and flicked off the majority of the ink, and I'm just flicking that on to get more black splatter. And here's the finished card. For the next card that we did with the stencil, I added a sentiment strip and I'm flicking on some black splatter to that one as well. And that just adds a little bit more contrast to the card. Here are some close-ups so you can see all of that great texture that's achieved with the watercolors, and I love how these cards turned out. I hope you found these projects inspiring and have some ideas for the June 2020 Inspiration Challenge. Share your projects with us and enter the challenge by hashtagging Altenew Challenge on social media.
Hello crafters, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching.